Greetings, shippers! Let's talk about canon ships and how they can sometimes diverge from what it seems the general public wants/expects. This happens a fair bit, but there is usually a group you can point to as actually wanting the proposed pairing. But sometimes the couple is a one-off that comes or seems to come completely out of nowhere. Such is the case with today's couple, Batman and Batgirl, specifically Barbara Gordon. Let's take a look back at this moment in fandom history and see why exactly this got so many people so mad. Quick side note, follow me on Twitter so you can always be up to date on what's coming up next. Let's get started. Batman and Batgirl both have long histories, though the instances of their relationship crossing into sexually flirtatious territory are rare. But it has happened before. It was more heavily alluded to in the DCAU, specifically Batman Beyond.
He was hurt when I chose to stay behind with Bruce.
As his partner. His girlfriend? Whoa.
And in the continuation comics Batman Beyond 2.0, it's explained that Bruce got Barbara pregnant, but she was looking to get back with Dick, but before she could tell Dick, Bruce did, creating a rift in all three relationships, only solidified by her miscarriage which follows. While people found this to be off-putting and further proof of the darkness of the Batman Beyond verse, in general, there didn't seem to be as much outrage or controversy. Nowhere near as much as that which surrounded the addition of a Batman/Batgirl sex scene to the animated adaptation of The Killing Joke. So let's take a step back and try to examine why this is. The adaptation of The Killing Joke was met with excitement by many, especially after it was announced that it would bring back the classic voice talents of Kevin Conroy as Batman and Mark Hamill as the Joker. However, while The Killing Joke is considered a seminal graphic novel and a must-read by many, it has also had a polarizing effect on some readers, usually revolving around one key moment. That moment being the shooting and subsequent crippling of Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. Some go so far as to label it a sexual assault, as he proceeds to strip her down and take various pictures of her in pain in an attempt to drive her father insane. So why does this bother people? The Joker had done brutal things before. Granted, this was by far the darkest at the time. And this comic was part of a series of comics that darkened the whole comic industry thanks to their critical and commercial success. Well, for many, it came down to agency. Some readers felt it was unfair that such a major character moment could happen to a main character in a story that wasn't even about them. They saw it as an abuse of female characters to drive forward a male narrative. And some feel that the story is alienating to female fans. However, it must be noted that one cannot paint all female fans with the same brush. There are males and females who both love and hate this story. Others still felt that not every story is about every character, and in a story about another character, all side characters are up for grabs. Basically, if you're a side character, you're not safe. Also, others note that The Killing Joke was not truly meant to be a canon story, though many of its elements were indeed taken and became part of the main canon. Some actual DC writers felt so strongly that it was addressed in canon, with Barbara calling out Batman for his actions, and following this, a lot of work was done with her character, transforming her into Oracle, who actually became a fan favorite and a symbol of progress for those with disabilities, to the point where when her paralysis was retconned/cured in the New 52, many fans were upset by this development, feeling it was a step backwards and a sign of ableism. So some feel that even if the way it was handled in the story itself may have been a misstep, what came after more than made up for it. Basically, it all comes down to how you view fiction and the rules of fiction in interconnected works. Are stories microcosms that other writers need to work around, or must the overall universe constantly be kept in mind, with major changes being run through everybody? And if so, would any big changes ever really happen, since it's rare that all writers agree on the direction a character should go, which is usually when the editors step in, and then sometimes things can get a little weird. Writing for mediums like this is nothing if not a negotiation. All of that aside, The Killing Joke is a short read, so it was clear something would have to change to get it up to a full runtime for a film. The writers and creative team made the decision to expand Batgirl's role in an attempt to appease everyone, both purists who wanted the main story and detractors who wanted Barbara to get more agency. And as is often the case, when you try to please everyone, you please fewer than if you had never tried at all. Producer Bruce Timm said of the attempt, "We took that opportunity to basically tell a Batgirl story, which we don't often get a chance to do these days, and it was great because we could spend more time with her as a character and get to understand what she's all about, and how she's similar to Batman in some ways and really different in others." The good side of that is we get to spend more time with her and learn that she's an interesting character. The bad side of that is that we get to like her so much that when the killing joke part of the story happens, it's like, oh no, because we really like her. The film actually opens on Batgirl's narration and then dives into a non-canon portion for approximately 30 minutes, as this is the segment that attempts to make Batgirl a more tangible part of the narrative, which posed many problems. 1. It stopped the adaptation from being the story many fans wanted to see. 2. Many of the people they were attempting to appeal to had already decided to boycott, and nothing was bringing them back. 3. Even if one didn't mind the changes or the idea of changes, many felt it was a terrible portrayal of Batgirl, even worse than if she hadn't been in it at all. This Batgirl is rash and incapable of handling the pressures of crime fighting, which is a tale that can be told, but there is little time for it in an adaptation of another story. And on top of that, part of fleshing her out involves her becoming a twisted kind of love interest for Batman, if one can call anything that happens between these characters even close to a romance. It's this aforementioned lack of control she displays which leads to the infamous Batgirl/Batman sex scene. This sequence and the way it unfolded made many feel uncomfortable for many reasons. The hate/angry sex angle, the fact that traditionally they share a more father-daughter-esque or at least mentor-mentee relationship, the fact that her reasons for doing it seemed childish, adding additional emphasis onto their age difference, the fact that despite saying she isn't attached and that it was just sex, she seems more attached than ever. For many, it's a line that simply did not need to be crossed. Also, in this scene attempting to give her agency and control and make the sex her choice, Batman is reduced to little more than a prop, which is the very same complaint detractors had with her portrayal. This scene left many people wondering, why sex? Ultimately, the entire sequence is there so that Barbara quits crime fighting after finding herself tempted to kill a criminal, which has nothing to do with the sex itself. And it's really there so she has quit by the time the Joker shoots her, theoretically making his actions less grotesque, which it doesn't, nor does it make her less of a victim. Side note, there's nothing wrong with being a victim if the narrative handles it well, which is where people's mileages vary. It also, for some, then turns the tale into Batman seeking to bring a man to justice who had hurt his woman, which for many makes the tale worse as it takes on a more traditional or troublesome rape-revenge story format. So ultimately, despite all the changes, very little that had actually upset people was changed. It did not help matters either when at a DC panel Comic-Con wherein fans were asked questions and expressing concerns about the depiction, one heckler shouted, "Yeah, by using sex and then pining for Bruce," when Batgirl was described as a strong female character. To which writer Brian Azzarello replied, "Want to say that again?" The whole incident escalated from fans feeling that the depiction didn't do Barbara any more justice than Moore's original story, but it also serves as a key example of how passionate both fans and creators feel about this moment. But even with all that said, some still wonder, why sex at all? Batman and Batgirl are hardly a couple the public clamors for, although there are of course shippers who pair these two and have been for quite some time. Producer Bruce Timm claims the tension was always present, stating, "There's clearly an unstated attraction between the two of the characters from the very beginning, and I think it's there in the comics. If you go back and look at the Adam West show, it's there in the Adam West show. It's subtle, but to me it's always been there."
Are you all right?
Yes. Thanks to you.
Barbara! Hey, Babs!
Bruce Timm isn't the only person seeing hidden tension. While this pairing may not be common, it does exist. However, it seems to be the rarity of this pairing and the way this portrayal was handled that has been leaving people perplexed, and has also driven some legitimate shippers into hiding. So let's talk briefly about sex and agency in the world of fiction. Sex can be a powerful narrative tool, and if wielded wisely, highly effective. The problem is, it is often tied up in stories of power and used to depict who has it or who does not, which can often lead to some disturbing and unforeseen if poorly handled narrative consequences, which unfortunately this topic often is, as well as often being depicted unrealistically. And of course, in its most shallow form, it's depicted purely for titillation. This scene is an attempt to give Barbara agency and control, but it ultimately backfires since her character is so out of control, and instead adds to Batman's pathos while simultaneously also removing him from the scene entirely, calling into question both their characters. And if the argument is that the scene is actually to show that her character is so out of control, then ultimately this Batgirl is still not the Batgirl that people wanted to see portrayed. Ultimately, what fans wanted was to see a competent depiction of the Batgirl of that time, strong and confident, who had been crime fighting for a while. In a way, this depiction actually makes how her character was handled in The Killing Joke more tragic by her absence. Someone cut down in their prime for no reason. A truly cruel joke on the readers as well as the characters. Some would argue it's a sequence that's supposed to make you feel angry, especially because it happens for such a petty, trivial reason. Though some would say it's not petty at all. Others argue that her femaleness comes from an overabundance of male protagonists, and were there more female protagonists with male side counterparts, many of them would be thrown to the side just as callously, as many feel such is the fate of the side character. However, this sex scene also highlighted something very different and frustrating for a separate group of fans: the liberties creators have and can take with characters regardless of how little sense it makes. Many fanfiction authors take great pains with their stories and characteristics, and many face harsh backlash for the pairings they've found themselves drawn to. So when it's shown that a creator can essentially pluck a pairing out of midair and make it canon, and not even overly well, that can be an annoying moment for some. As highlighted by the excerpts from The Con, tensions can run high as both creator and fan can feel like they are being stepped on, and as a result, both can sometimes go too far. Of course, there are many who don't have any affinity for this story one way or the other. Others who were scared away by all this backlash and the angry social media fights, and still more who didn't think her depiction was that bad, just different. For others, this work has become difficult to discuss as certain fans and critical analysis outlets have set up a dichotomy, stating that if one is a fan of Batgirl, one could not be a fan of this work, and vice versa. Some even go so far as to say if you like this work, you are anti-woman. This has made it awkward for those who both enjoy this work and the character to join the discussion. The Killing Joke adaptation did succeed in taking the onus away from the infamous shooting scene, but instead placed it on top of this questionable sex scene. Could a feasible romantic Batman and Batgirl relationship ever be depicted? Probably, but it would take a lot of work. Any story can be told, and every story has a right to be told, but there are some stories that more people are interested in hearing than others. As for The Killing Joke, in an era such as the time of this recording where controversy is so easily stirred up, it's likely that this will continue to be a polarizing story for many. The Killing Joke was not the end of Barbara Gordon, and in fact some felt the way it was later handled greatly strengthened her character and those around her, and led to the introduction of other Batgirls who many are just as fond of. That's the beauty of comics. The stories are ever shifting and changing. Even if there's something a reader absolutely hates, the format of the medium means there is always hope it can be undone. And ultimately, many changes are made, as each new generation of writers comes with their own interpretations of what came before and what should come after. So who knows what the future holds for any of these characters. So that was a moment in fandom history. What other moments would you like to hear about? Let me know down below, as well as what you guys think of The Killing Joke, and if there are any other pairings that have suddenly appeared in a canon work that just left you scratching your head. Share everything down below. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks so much for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe, turn on your bell notification to never miss a video, and as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.